silent intelligence.
Hi, my name is Daniel Abadowski. I'm the founder of the Silent Intelligence, and it's my absolute pleasure to interview today Dr. Richard Soley, who is the chairman and CEO of Object Management Group and executive director of the Industrial Internet Consortium.
Thanks, Daniel. Always a pleasure.
And we're here in the Hard Rock Hotel in San Diego at the Industry of Things World 2016. Richard, welcome to San Diego.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to come to San Diego, too, especially when it's snowing in Boston.
Very true, very true. How do you like the show so far?
I think it's excellent, actually. Great turnout, good conversations, excellent keynotes, except for mine, of course, and good descriptions of what's going on in the industrial internet and standardization in the industrial internet of things.
Super. So right now in February of 2016, what do you say, what's changing in the Internet of Things and in the industrial space overall? What are the key trends?
I think the most interesting thing about the Internet of Things in general is that it's the only technology that's been at the top of the Gartner hype curve for 2 years in a row. And I don't think people make enough of that. I mean, there's so many hypes that come and go. The difference is this is a hype that actually has something behind it. We've got design wins by the dozen. Besides the test beds that we're running, where we're looking for design wins, where we're looking for technology is best suited for real industries like banking and healthcare and manufacturing and transportation. We've got design wins like a crazy guy in northwestern Costa Rica, Heredia, who quit as editor-in-chief of the national newspaper, opened a dairy farm in northwestern Costa Rica, and by using Internet of Things technology, by tracking his cows, turns out 40% more milk per cow than his neighbors using the same cows on the same terrain. So it's technology hype, absolutely, but it's hype where there's something behind it. And we're starting to see these stories by the dozen now. While we speak here, Jim Heppelman from PTC is talking about smart connected products including tennis rackets. I mean, you're starting to see the technology everywhere.
Excellent. Speaking of digital divide, interesting. And so you mentioned test beds, you mentioned connected products, you mentioned manufacturing. So what does actually Industrial Internet Consortium do? What are your top priorities and top tasks?
You know, whenever people talk about the Industrial Internet Consortium, the first thing they say is we need interoperability, we need security, and that's absolutely true. But the reality is the technology is new enough that we don't necessarily know how to use it in mining, in banking, in manufacturing, in healthcare, and so forth. So our idea is really simple, and that is build test beds, try it out. Some of them will fail, but you learn from failure. Failure is a necessary ingredient of success. So we're building test beds in manufacturing. In fact, our first test bed was in manufacturing, led by Bosch, Tech Mahindra, and Cisco. We're building test beds in smart energy grids, a command and control test bed led by RTI, a small company here in California. We're building test beds in healthcare. We're building test beds in asset management and asset utilization. So all these test beds are about trying things out, seeing what works. Once we know what works, we're also going to know where it would have been useful to have more standards. So we build architectures, we design against use cases, we build security frameworks, absolutely. But as we go through that, as we go through those working groups to develop things like security frameworks, and as we build those test beds, we realize, oh my goodness, it would have been useful if we had a standard in this space where the standard is missing. I'll give you a specific example. Our manufacturing test bed launched last March, and we learned through the first year of that test bed project that we need better interoperability standards between tools on the floor of manufacturing sites, on factory floors. So we're actually looking at ways to bring standards, we take those requirements for standards and take them out to standards organizations to develop standards for tools. We find that most of the standards we're looking for are in the semantic space. So it's great that we can move bits and bytes, and there are lots of standards out there for moving bits and bytes. The OMG had one in 1990, 26 years ago. The hard part is, what do those bits and bytes mean? And that's the semantic standards that we need in manufacturing and healthcare, in finance, in transportation, and lots of other areas.
Excellent. So how do you move from the test beds and from those frameworks to standards?
So the first thing we get out of the test beds is transformational business outcomes. That is disruptive new products and services. We learn what can become an outcome-based solution, that is a lease solution, rather than a capital solution. But we also learn, as I say, requirements and priorities for standards. We take those to our liaison organizations. The Industrial Internet Consortium is not a standards organization, but we have liaison with over a dozen standards organizations and open source organizations. So for example, our strong relationship with the Object Management Group, which although it's run by the same group of people, is a separate organization with separate membership, is looking at how it uses its expertise in semantic standards to drive semantic standards for factory floors. And at the same time, the Eclipse Foundation, that we were deeply involved in starting as well, is going to develop open source solutions against those open standards so that you'll have this irresistible combination of proven requirements with standards that meet those requirements, with open source that implements those standards.
Excellent.
We're here to drive the market. That's how you drive the market.
No, that's fantastic, and I think that definitely makes a lot of difference in the industrial space that we're seeing in manufacturing and other industries. But what recommendation would you give to companies that are just starting and just exploring the IoT? Because a lot of them are worried that there's just so many proprietary protocols out there, so many different standards or non-standards to say, and some of them are wondering if they should wait or if they should jump straight into it. What would you recommend?
I absolutely think you should wait and let your competitors put you out of business. No, but seriously, this is a disruptive change, and not just a disruptive change in the technology space. It's a disruptive change for the users of technology, and the users of technology are everyone. More importantly, it's a disruptive change in markets that have not been disrupted by the internet before, like the manufacturing space, like the transportation space. And those companies in broadcast and in healthcare apparatus and so forth have got to pay attention. Will there be a single protocol for anything on the industrial internet? No, of course not. That's not going to happen. And it's the job of standards organizations to bring together those different pieces and make sure they're different protocols, which may be now proprietary or even open, bridge between them. So if you went to Tom Burke's talk today, for example, he talked about the relationship between the Object Management Group's data distribution service and the OPC Foundation's OPC UA. They do very similar things. I could argue all day long about why DDS is a better specification, and I will if you ask, but the reality is the OPC implementations are not going to go away. So it's the job of our organizations to make sure that there is a connection between them, so that if you chose one, you're not walled out of that market. There isn't a walled garden anywhere. So what I say to companies that are trying to figure out what to do first is be brave and try it, and assume that some of your tests are going to fail. But you're going to learn more from those tests, those failures, than you could possibly learn from any success. If you get lucky and you got a success right up front, good for you. But failures are valuable. Failures are necessary for success. They're a necessary ingredient for success. So give it a try. Choose something, probably smaller, and try implementing it and see what works and what doesn't work. If you have to change, you have to change. If you have to have impact on the standards organizations and tell them, I need to have a connection between OPC and DDS, have that impact. You can have that say. All of these organizations are open just as much to end users as they are to the technology vendors.
Excellent. Thank you. Now, let me ask you about kind of new companies that are coming to market, startups and new technology companies. A lot of them are addressing platform space and saying we have a platform that connects everything to everything and makes everything talk. And it's very hard to differentiate between them and figure out what recommendation would you give to them? Where should they pay attention? Where should they differentiate? How they should grow in this space?
The problem with any platform play that says, I will own the entire platform, is it's, what's that word again? Wrong. It never happens. Nobody owns it all, especially in a market when the whole point is to connect everything to everything else. There's not going to be a single winner. So what I would look for if I was a buyer of one of these platform solutions, whether it's from a big company like PTC or IBM or Bosch or something, or whether it's from a small company, I would look for a solution that is flexible and connects to everything else. Not only that connects to all the solutions that exist today, but all the solutions that will exist tomorrow. Because the biggest problem in our industry is these solutions that, like enterprise service buses, try to create the one layer that everybody talks to, one ring to rule them all. This is the ring to rule them all. And then find themselves in a world when there are multiple rings to rule them all, and they have to build another layer, and another layer, and another layer. Don't look for that. Look for flexibility. On the side of the platform player, I would say, Be flexible and make sure you're willing to connect to anything out there, because the world changes. Even if you get connections to everything that exists today, there'll be something else tomorrow.
Excellent. Now, if one company wants to join the IIC, what should they do? Should they go about it?
They should just send me cash. No, seriously. You just come to our website and fill out the form and send a check to the company, not to me. But that's not the interesting bit. The interesting bit is the quarterly meetings, face-to-face meetings, where they can participate in the development of test beds, where they can have impact on the architecture, on the use cases, on the security use cases in the security framework, and actually find ecosystem partners to build those test beds. Those are quarterly face-to-face meetings, bi-weekly test bed development meetings, and weekly meetings of groups like the Security Framework Group and so forth. The latter all being telephone meetings. And of course, those are going to be inconvenient for some people for a quarter of the year. That's just no way to do it when you have members in 29 countries and growing. You move the times around the world, but eventually somebody's going to be unhappy. What we often find in the test bed discussions is somebody who's got a great idea for a test bed. So for example, I'm talking to a mining company at the moment that has a wonderful idea for a test bed, and they're looking for technology to squeeze into that stack to solve the specific problems that they see that they'd like to see solved in their test bed. Or we see a lot that are the other way around. They've got a solution and they want to see, how can I solve a problem that we find in a real test bed that matters? Whether it's an RFID company like Tigo, or whether it's a communications company like TT Tech. They might run a test bed themselves, but more likely they're going to slot into somebody else's test bed. So they'll come to those test bed meetings with ideas about what kind of test bed they can support, that can help.
Last week we had this announcement with the formation of the OCF, or is it Open Connectivity Forum, right?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, Open Connectivity Forum, which came from the Open OIC, right? Open Interconnect Consortium.
And the UPnP Foundation, that's right.
And a few other companies joined, I believe. Sometimes it's hard to keep track of all the new industry consortia coming, but would you say we're moving towards consolidation of industry consortia?
Absolutely. I think it's absolutely natural for companies to want to create new organizations that match their needs and requirements. But I think the most important thing from our perspective is we're the only one that's focused specifically on test beds, learning from test beds about disruptive new products and services, transformational business outcomes, and also learning about requirements and priorities for new standards, and then sending those to standards organizations. Although it's a perfectly good idea to build standards early and to do open source implementation, which makes it easier to adopt those standards. While that's a good idea, I think it's really powerful to learn what you need first, figure out the semantic requirements, and then build those standards.
Super. Richard, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dan.
Thanks for your time.
The Silent Intelligence. Learn more at www.thesilentintelligence.com.